The movie kicks off with a young lady named Melanie Paul, who is in a desperate situation to escape from a malevolent entity determined to end her life by any means possible. This continued for a while, and after much struggle, she was able to escape through a tunnel and have a massive relief. For a moment, everything seems to be now fine, until she spots her killer. Immediately, she began to beg him to stop, saying she can't do it again, and she is exhausted from dying over and over again. Unfortunately for Melanie, the masked killer wasn't ready to pay any attention as he proceeds to finish her off. The scene then shifts to the present day, and we are meant to discover that Melanie has been missing for years now. So her sister, whose name is Clover, along with a group of friends, heads to her last known location where Melanie filmed a video, hoping to uncover some little details or clues and possibly find her or even find closure for her disappearance. Later on, they all did a kind of ritual to connect with any lingering energy from Melanie. Unfortunately, this nearly turned to a disaster as the group nearly got hit by a bus. After which, Clover went into a store for a coffee, so just as she approaches the counter, the clerk at the store asked Clover about the ritual they performed earlier, but she brushes it off as nothing. So at that moment, Clover asks the cashier, whose name is Hill, if he worked at the store last year. He nonchalantly confirms that he has been working at this very store for years now, although he feels each year is the same but different at the same time. So after hearing this, Clover then showed him a picture of Melanie, hoping he would be able to recognize her. Surprisingly, when he sees the picture, he identifies her as a missing person, which made Clover uncomfortable, since she never told him that. But he narrated that people often come to his store asking about her, and warns that those particular individuals do vanish around a place called Glor Valley. So immediately Clover returned her friends to inform them that she may have found a lead. So in the evening, despite the bad weather conditions, they drive out to the area. But as they did so, they argued if it was safe to drive with this weather condition. While this was ongoing, they all arrive at a point where it seems the rain appears to stop at the valley's edge, as if a supernatural barrier is shielding the place. They are all shocked and amazed by this scenario, which was unknown to them. They were even more baffled at how the rain avoids the valley entirely. So just then, Nina is of the idea that they go check out the nearby house, so everyone follows her inside, while Clover remains fixated on the invisible barrier. Once they were in, the group yell out, and bid to know if anyone is home, but no one was in. Each of them ventures off to inspect different rooms, examining everything they can find. Nearby, while Clover was still outside, she sees someone resembling Melanie standing in the rain. So she moves toward the figure, only to be followed by Max, who was once her boyfriend. Back inside the house, Abel, who was busy making a video, stumbles across a bulletin board plastered with photos of missing people. Just as he continues to check them out, he spots Melanie's picture among them. Meanwhile, as night falls, Max pulls Clover back inside, and she informed him that she thought she saw something. On the other hand, Nina discovers Melanie's name written in a guest book, but the text fades toward the end. Quickly, she shows this to Megan, but as the two tries to process all this, Abel informed them of his own findings, which was Melanie's missing person poster. Later on, Clover is informed about all this, so when Clover flips through the guest book, she realizes that this house is Glor Valley, confirming that this is the last place Melanie was seen. Immediately, Clover began to claim that the person who she saw earlier was her sister who was calling her, but she didn't want to let herself believe that. During this, Nina notices that the hourglass has been turned, setting a mysterious timer into motion. While they also try to figure this out, they heard a distant noise, which they all went to check out. Unluckily for them, they realize that the car is now gone. The vehicle then started while inside the storm, so quickly, in fear, they all ran into the house, but when they got into the house, it vanishes from sight. So as some of them go to find for help, they find a hatch leading to a basement. Although the lights are dead, they continue their walk using only their phone flashlights to guide them. As they explore, they discover a telephone, but no matter how many times Clover dials a number for help, it wasn't able to go through. Megan tries the radio, but it also fails. Back upstairs, Abel on the other hand hears a noise coming from inside the building, so he decided to go check it out by following it toward another room, thereby leaving Nina all alone. Just as she stood there alone, she heard a little noise from the same direction and cautiously follows into the room from earlier. Nina, who was unable to see anything due to the room being dark, decided to switch on the light. The moment she did so, she witnesses a traumatic scene, a masked killer slicing Abel clean in half. In fear, Nina screams, and this alerts the rest. Just as they all rush toward the sound, Max urges Clover and Megan to stay behind, so he investigates. They all ran into a room where each of them hide in a separate spot to evade the killer. Unfortunately, the masked man follows them into the basement. So while they stay put, Max silently took out a chair and smashes it over him. But the killer, who seems to not be affected by it, jams a splinter into Max's eye, killing him gruesomely. Unluckily for the girls, the killer decides to go into the room where they were, so as to find his prey. While he was at it, Clover spots a knife and quietly grabs it. The killer then walked towards where Megan was hiding, and once he is sure that someone was there, the killer drags Megan from the cabinet, before then bashes her head against the floor repeatedly. So Clover, seeing how helpless Megan was, Clover ran and stabs the killer in desperation in order to distract him from Megan to survive. But her plans didn't go in accordance as the killer turns his attention to Clover, who flees the house in terror. As she ran into the forest, she trips and spots someone resembling Melanie. But before she can reach her, the killer stabbed her from behind. Just as the hourglass runs out, the strange mechanical system resets it. Instantly, Clover and her friends are revived, standing in the exact positions they were in before the killings began. Now they know things look very serious, and at the same time, they were all confused and terrified. Once they regroup, they begin to discuss about how they were each murdered. Immediately, Abel draw their attention towards the fact that their pictures are now in the bulletin board with other missing individuals. While they all try to reminisce on what is going on, the lights suddenly start to flicker and the front door slams shut on its own, adding to their growing dread. Abel bolts the door, but to everyone's shock, it swings open. Just then, Megan begins to feel an intense supernatural presence. Her body starts contorting and cracking grotesquely, letting out a very loud scream which affects almost all the bulbs. The group can't find Megan, but they can still hear her voice. After a while, they were able to find Megan, but in a weird situation as she is now levitating, while also pointing at each photo of the missing individuals, before then mimicking their final words. After which, Megan screams loud before her neck snaps, thereby leading to her death. Quickly, Abel warns, stating no one to touch her body to avoid potential possession. Suddenly, they hear loud pounding at the door. Clover and Max go to check it out, and just then, they hear Melanie's voice calling for help from outside. So desperate, Clover decides to open the door, but no one is there. Instantly, an invisible force flings her across the yard and slams the door shut behind her. It then drags her toward a decaying house nearby and hurls her through the front entrance. After a short while, the main house door opens again. So when Max tries to leave, Abel stops him, warning that it is too risky. This leads to a hit argument until Max storms out to go rescue Clover despite the warnings. Back into the old house, Clover gained consciousness, where she sees weird-looking mannequin faces. She walked towards an elderly woman seated silently in a chair. When the woman refuses to speak, Clover tries to sneak away, only to find the woman staring at her maniacally while also laughing gently. The elderly woman cryptically tells her that she must survive the night or become part of the house. Just as Max nears the house, the old woman grabbed Clover and forces her to inhale her breath, mentally corrupting her before then turning to dust. Once this was over, the door opens, allowing Max to enter. Meanwhile, Nina and Abel try to flee using the car, but their path is blocked by a towering creature. As they both panicked in serious fear, Abel reverses the vehicle back toward the house. Sadly for him, he was killed inside, while the monster corners Nina. Back to Max, he seriously continued to search for Clover. He headed upstairs, and out of nowhere, a chair began to slide across the room all on its own, with a creepy doll. Max snatched the doll and aggressively threw it away. At that moment, Clover, who is now masked and menacing, struck him down. She walked out of the house confidently, only to be struck by a masked figure driving Abel's car. Yet again, following the sequence of events, the hourglass reset once more. One by one, Clover and her friends were brought back to life, but this time, they each returned missing a fragment of their soul. They barricaded all the exits and locked themselves in the bathroom. It hit them hard, as they are caught in a never-ending loop with no exit in sight. Suddenly, Abel goes to drink some water. However, after a short while of them discussing and trying to figure things out, Abel began coughing up blood, and within seconds his body exploded, making the rest traumatized by this. Nina attempted to wash off the blood but also exploded. At this moment, it is evident that the water was the cause. They bolted out of the bathroom. Sadly, Megan had drunk some of it too, and her death was the most horrific of them all. After witnessing this, Clover begged Max to kill her so they could reset again, and so they could formulate a plan. But Max urged her to wait a little longer since dawn is almost near. As they both argued, Max exploded as well, leaving Clover for last. Now sick from all the happenings, Clover lay down. But shockingly for her, Mr. Hill from the store appeared and told her no one survived or escaped by sitting idle. Then, just like the others, she too exploded. And once again, the hourglass turned. They were resurrected yet again. But this time, instead of waiting, they chose to act. Clover discovered Hill's ID card and pointed out that he had a suspicious link to the house. Just then, Nina tried leaving the house, but she changed her mind after. Megan came to a conclusion that the entire setup was designed to instill fear, as the antagonist wanted them terrified. Just then, Max came across an old tape in an evidence box and played it on the television. It showed the first person ever trapped in a house, forced to commit atrocities in order to survive, eventually losing all humanity. That's when they realized they were being transformed into the same thing. After which, Hill reached out to them through the radio, telling them there was a way out, but it had a condition. Only 4 could escape, meaning 1 must die. They all declined the offer. Megan guessed Hill was nearby. Clover contacted him again, asking for a face-to-face meeting. Hill agreed, but on the condition that only her come. While they all discussed about the offer, he told Clover that Melanie was with him, and if she followed his instructions, he might let them reunite. So Clover ran off to meet him. The others agreed to find her, but warned that if she was dead, they'd kill one another and reset again. Abel was the only one who disagreed. Just then, Nina killed Abel and told the group to go after Clover while she stayed behind. Clover arrived at the location, but unfortunately for her, she stepped into a trap. A chain dragged her into the deep woods. So just as the hourglass get low, Abel told Nina to do everything she could to stay alive. Sadly, the masked killer returned, and Nina sacrificed Abel by saying him first. Deep into the forest, Megan and Max search for Clover. Just as they did so, they heard a noise, so they hide. Just out of nowhere, saliva dripped onto Megan's jacket. They looked up and realized a monster loomed overhead. A chase ensues, but just as they did so, Megan slipped onto a cracked glass surface. But when Max tried to help her, the creature grabbed her and dragged her into the shadows. Back to Clover, she continues to really struggle to escape. Just as she did so, Max found and tried freeing her. While at it, Melanie appeared in a now monster-like form and attacked them. Max quickly used the trap on her head, which gave them an opportunity to escape. Clover, who was obviously now broken, realizing Melanie was beyond saving, then begged Max to kill her so they could restart, but his love held him back. However, as things get intense, he gave in and slit her throat. Not quite long, he saw the monster who was in search of them, so Max drank the water dripping from a wooden plank and exploded in front of the beast. Meanwhile, Clover had a flashback of pleading with her sister on day of her trip not to leave her alone. Clover gained consciousness and the group was back again, but something this time feels strange. For example, Abel has a growing odd lumps on his back, which the group assured him he looked just fine. It was now the 13th night, and when Clover checked the record book, she noticed no one had ever lasted this long. They knew this was their final chance, and since Megan hadn't returned yet, they all searched for her, fearing she had become part of the night itself. Just then, they realized they actually can't remember things that happened from the past, and their memories were gone. Suddenly, Abel realized he had recorded everything on his phone. He showed them footage of their countless deaths. In one of the video, we get to see Hill inspecting their bodies post-mortem, while Megan captured it. She had secretly followed Hill in search of answers. Just then, they heard a siren, and when they looked outside, they saw hordes of monsters. This time, Clover chose not to run. Instead, she insisted they enter the vault they'd always avoided and confront Hill in person. They all armed themselves in order to do in accordance to the plan. Clover opened the vault door. Inside, they faced a choice which was 2 separate paths. So Clover opened a window and stepped in while the rest followed. They all witnessed numerous weird things around. Suddenly, a monster burst out, sending them all running. It nearly killed Clover, but Max struck it down with an axe, giving them an opportunity to escape. The crew went into a tunnel, and unluckily for them, more monsters kept closing in. The masked killer arrived, and just as they continued their run, Clover broke away to continue her search for Megan. Unfortunately for her, her now monstrous sister attacked. So Clover tried to reach what remained of her soul, but sadly, it didn't work. So with no other choice, she killed her sister. Back to Max, the battle between him and the masked killer continues, and after a while, the group used whatever they could find to beat him down. Together, after a long extended struggle, they managed to kill him. However, this nightmare was far from over, as the hourglass was nearly out. Now back to Clover, she hides when a monster crept behind her. It moved on, unknowingly to it someone was present. Clover continued her walk, and during this, she discovered the lab where the first experiments took place. Suddenly, she heard Megan screaming, so Clover followed it and find Megan trapped in a room with the original monster. In her search for a way to save Megan, she stumbled into Hill's office and realized he'd been documenting and noting every little flaws, as this was simply just a project for him the entire time. Hill returned and locked the door behind him. Hill narrates that the patients were the fuel, keeping the place alive. As he spoke, Clover subtly searched for a way to kill him. She slightly pushed his coffee toward the leaking water supply, then placed it back as if untouched. Meanwhile, her friends were being hunted down. Hill took a sip, and within moments, he exploded just as expected. Quickly, Clover grabbed his keys and rushed to Megan, who was in serious danger with the original breed. Clover managed to free her just in time and seal the monster inside the cage. The others were still fleeing from creatures, but luckily for them, they managed to escape also. Meanwhile, just as the hourglass ran out, morning broke, signaling their freedom, meaning they have finally escaped this endless cycle. Immediately, Abel, who was now in his vehicle, drove everyone out. The scene cut to the CCTV footage and a vehicle arriving, and a whistle can be heard. The movie then came to an end. Kindly subscribe for more horror recap. Thanks for watching and goodbye.